On the line right now is Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan. He is a guy who knows a great deal about that part of the world. He's a Fox News military contributor. Lieutenant Colonel Cowan, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Brian. Thanks for you guys inviting me to join you.
All right. So a couple of things. First, the Brits are not going to be on board, so we're not going to have international support. Second of all, there was this story that came out yesterday at about this time, quoting an intelligence official. It was the AP, and it said that the intelligence in this was not a slam dunk. And you're a practiced hand in this town and in the region. What do you read into all of that?
Well, isn't it ironic that this administration has had no problem leaking all kinds of secrets in the past, but is having a hard time getting this intelligence report out to Congress, members of Congress, and in fact, frankly, even to our allies overseas, to justify what it is that they want to do. And, we certainly have confidence in Israeli intelligence, or we should, but I think one of the things that's confused people a little bit is some of this video floating around out there that shows what purportedly to be the rebels firing some kind of chemical weapons. Brian, we have good signals intelligence collection throughout that whole area, extremely good. Of course, NSA can collect on all of us here in the States, so they ought to be able to collect over there. And
one would hope,
we have a lot of sites. Yeah, they have a lot of sites over there doing it. I think our human intelligence on the ground really sucks. But, if this administration can't come up with something, they must be, and have presented it already, to at least members of Congress, and they say they're going to have something even more sanitized to the American public. I'm at this point really starting to wonder what we have and what value it is, and there's a great irony here to me, and that is that the holder of a Nobel Peace Prize can't find one other country, even one other country, willing to take military action with him. It's just such a great irony here.
All right, so you know the region pretty well. How are the Syrians likely to react?
Well, listen, I do know the region. I just came back from there a week ago today, and first off, I can tell you that most people over there really do not like our president. They don't hold him in a lot of confidence. They see him as having really stumbled throughout the region. How are the Syrians going to react? I'm not sure that the Syrians themselves would react. I think we need to be more worried about the Iranian threats to react. No matter what it is we do. And I don't think the Iranians are necessarily going to, and they're going to do it through Hezbollah, of course. I don't think they're necessarily going to do something against us. A lot of threats yesterday by the Iranians, and maybe lesser ones by Hezbollah, saying that Israel was going to pay the price for anything we did. And I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, there were some rockets fired from Hezbollah land, that's what I call southern Lebanon, into Israel just last week. But if we take any kind of action over there, my concern would be the Israelis. They're handing out gas masks right now. They've called up their reserves. They know that they're really the ones in the center of the bullseye if the U.S. takes some action against Syria.
Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan's our guest, and he is retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel and co-founder and CEO of WVC3 Inc. in Reston, Virginia. And Colonel Cowan, here's my problem. I think everyone, at this point, analyzing this situation suggests that perhaps the president should not have drawn that red line last year. A lot of people are saying that because it's really boxed him into a corner. And you heard from the British Parliament yesterday a lot of MPs speaking out and saying, why should we put our boys on the line and our resources and our nation on the line to back up the president for his red line? That's his problem. However, he did it, and shouldn't we back up the president's word, no matter who the president is, when it comes to an international situation like this?
Well, Larry, look, I think that the president, and I've heard others say this too, I think that last year when he drew that red line, he did it without really consulting with his own military or anybody that was really an expert in that region. He might have consulted with Valerie Jarrett. I might question her qualifications to have been his number one advisor on this, but he didn't. I believe he felt, I'm the president of the United States. If I make a threat like this, there's no way in the world the Syrians are going to cross it. The fact of the matter is the Syrians, going back to the bombing of the barracks in Beirut in 1983, they've had their fingers in one fashion or another, in almost every terrorist act that's been perpetrated against U.S. or even Western interests around the world. I mean, even Pan Am 103 was planned right there in Damascus. And most people tend to forget that during the Iraq War, the Syrians were directly involved in the deaths of a number of young American men and women, servicemen and women, serving over there. And Assad and his father before him have just had a great time going after Americans, killing Americans, doing things to Americans, and never getting paid back for it. And, this may be another case where there is no real payback for those guys. They've got a lot of American blood on their hands.
Or I hear what you're saying, Colonel, I hear what you're saying, but you could also look at this and say, well, all right, fine, he's been a thorn in our side, he's done all this stuff, maybe this is a good reason to just finally get this taken care of and knock him out.
Well, the problem, Larry, is that if we do something really hard on him and the regime falls or stumbles and gives the upper hand to the rebellion forces, to the resistance forces, we may even have a bigger problem. I know you've got James Rosen coming on in a little while. James and I had a talk earlier this week. We were talking about who's the better option here, Assad or the people fighting him. And it turns out that, as James said, and I like this, he said, what's our option, the devil we know or the devil we don't? Mm-hmm. I think the reality is we have not done a good job of aligning ourselves with the resistance. We haven't helped the elements of the resistance, which would be pro-Western, willing to get along with Israel, have a sense of democracy about them. Instead, we've let other people really push the arms and weapons, the influence to the insurgents, to the rebellious people, and what we have here is, as anybody who's paying attention knows, we have a lot of bad guys, Al-Qaeda and other extremists out there, who may have the upper hand right now when it comes to resistance, and may indeed, if Assad falls, be the ones that take over. Well, holy cow, guess who has control of the chemical weapons at that point?
Right.
So we have really boxed ourselves into a bad situation, and I would say most of it goes back to our failure to get involved with the resistance early on and try and mold it and turn it into something to the degree we could have, which would be a good option for Assad. And we don't have that right now.
All right. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, it is always a pleasure to have you on. We'll tap into your knowledge again as this thing moves forward. Thanks a lot.